I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, State Senator Manka Dhingra outright lied about her work history, but the Legislative Ethics Board gives her a free pass. Plus,
It was actually by the mayor of Seattle as well.
come again, did Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell really endorse a socialist candidate for the state legislature? And we go over some key moments in the vice presidential debate, including their discussion on housing. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello, darlings, and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. Well, I've officially lost faith in the Legislative Ethics Board. So there's a board in Olympia. It's made up of a bipartisan group of lawmakers, some other state employees that basically looks into accusations that state lawmakers violated ethics laws, which is good. You want to have that, right? Sometimes this stuff happens. But based on their investigation into whether State Senator Manka Dhingra lied on her official Senate bio about her work history to benefit her campaign for Attorney General, I suddenly do not have so much faith in the Legislative Ethics Board to actually hold lawmakers accountable for a breach in ethics. So I realize some of you will already be familiar with this story, but for folks who just started watching the show in the last few months, I want to revisit all of this. So State Senator Manka Dhingra, uber left member of the state Senate, very pro-criminal. She worked for many years as a King County senior deputy prosecuting attorney, which she often used as this sort of trump card to get out of jail free card for her soft on crime policies. It's like, well, you can't accuse me of loving criminals. I'm a prosecutor. And she often talked about her work in the present tense while she was running for Attorney General. She didn't make it past the primary, thank God. But I think that our story shedding light on the fact that she was lying about being a current prosecutor probably had something to do with that. So back in June, we ended up airing a story saying, hey, Manka Dhingra is all over her social media pages, all over her official bios. She is claiming to be a current senior deputy prosecuting attorney. She was saying it on her campaign page. She was saying it on her official bio on the state Senate website. And we got a tip that hey, you should look into that because she hasn't worked at the prosecutor's office for some time. And she also, by the way, had put it at the very beginning of the video voter guide. So she was lying directly to voters about being a current senior deputy prosecuting attorney. Here's a clip.
Hi, I am Manka Dhingra, Deputy Majority Leader of the Washington State Senate, Senior Deputy Prosecuting Attorney with King County, and I'm running to be your next Attorney General.
Yeah, unequivocal. I'm a senior deputy prosecuting attorney with King County. And again, that was a big part of I'm running for AG. I'm a prosecutor, all these things that are very relevant to the job I'm asking voters to give me. So we get this tip. Hey, Brandi, she doesn't work here anymore. She hasn't worked here in a while. I don't know why she's saying that. So we reach out to the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. It's easy, right? If she works there, they'll tell us, no, she works there. If she doesn't, they'll say, no, she doesn't. Well, they told us she doesn't work here. They gave us her employment history. She'd been a full-time prosecutor for 17 years up to 2017. Then she came back for just a few months in 2019 and a few months in 2021 on a temporary basis, like a part-time basis. Wasn't a prosecutor anymore. They hired her back on a part-time basis to do some work. One of them was during COVID. She was helping with some systems that she knew. So after we reached out to the prosecutor's office, hey, are you aware that she's saying and out on the campaign trail and on her official bio and all over her social media pages saying, I'm a senior deputy prosecuting attorney. So they proactively, the King County Prosecutor's Office, give them all the credit in the world. They reached out to her campaign and said, stop saying that in so many words. And we got these emails back and forth via public records. I mean, it was unequivocal. Again, hi, Manka, hope you're doing well. Came to our attention through a news reporter that you're stating you're a current senior deputy prosecuting attorney rather than a former senior deputy. Will you please correct this in your campaign materials? And in case there was any doubt, they sent her her own dates of employment, which is funny. It's like as if you would need to be sent your dates of employment to know you don't work somewhere anymore. Manka had responded at the time, hey, Lisa Mannion, the current prosecutor, told me I was on a leave of absence and that she considers me a current employee, to which the HR department with the prosecutor's office responded and said, yeah, I talked to Lisa. She doesn't recall having that conversation. Thanks, Heidi. So anyway, we do this story in June. Manka never responds, it kind of, we're still tracking updates, but she doesn't update her bios or anything. Then Como News does the story. Then the Seattle Times does the story based on our reporting. And so after the Seattle Times did the story, then Manka Dhingra goes to update her bios and her social media pages. But it was baffling because she said, instead of, senior deputy prosecuting attorney, she wrote that and then in parentheses on all her bio pages, leave of absence, which we had already long ago established was not the case. It's not even from us. The King County Prosecutor's Office told her in emails, hey, you're not on a leave of absence, like the HR department. Yet when she's caught red-handed, she updates her bios to say, oh, leave of absence, which was mind-boggling to us. So after that, the prosecutor's office continues to try to get Manka Dhingra to understand, like, hey, ma'am, you don't work here. You're not on a leave of absence. So Manka's trying to fix this. She digs back to something the old prosecutor, Dan Satterberg, told her, and she forwards emails to the prosecutor's office but hey, here's some exchanges I had between Dan Satterberg when he was leaving the office and Lisa Mannion when she was coming in. And Dan Satterberg said, this was after the last time she was there on a part-time basis and she was leaving. She literally said in the email, this is my last day at the prosecutor's office. I want to thank you for the opportunity to return to work in a non-political setting. Dan Satterberg said, always good to welcome you back after session, and our office is a better place because of you. The offer remains in place for 2022. So basically, hey, if you want to come back and work for us again on a temporary basis, offer remains in place. And Lisa Mannion responds with this throwaway line. Agreed. Thank you, Manka. It's awesome to have you as a colleague and as a lawmaker. So Manka's panicking. Because now she's being called out for why are you putting leave of absence? They just told you weren't. And she says, hey, well, these emails made me believe that I was on a leave of absence. So anyway, the prosecutor's office tries yet again. This is June 24th. They say, Manka, by way of further follow-up, our HR and payroll records do not reflect that you have been on leave at any time since your resignation email dated October 1st, 2021. We understand you may have had a conversation with Dan Satterberg while he was still the prosecutor, which led you to believe that you were on leave after your resignation, but Lisa does not recollect being part of such a conversation or having such a conversation with you after she was elected. Please know that our office does not currently consider you to be on leave. Is there any way to make that more clear? Please know our office does not currently consider you to be on leave. So during all of this, after our reporting, someone, I don't know who, filed a complaint with the Legislative Ethics Board saying she lied on her official Senate bio, saying all this time, and not to mention during speeches on the floor, while she was justifying her pro-criminal policies, making it sound very much so like she was a current prosecutor. So they put this complaint in, and it's shocking to me, the finding. So Nicole, if you could pull this up. So this is from the Legislative Ethics Board, and they say, nature of the complainant alleges that the respondent violated the Ethics Act by including on her official website biography a statement that she is still employed by the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So it's like a 2-page finding, and I must have left this off, Nicole, sorry, but I'll just read it from the actual thing. Hold on a second. So the bottom of this says, it's absolutely inexplicable. The finding, I want to read the finding for you. It says, the question is whether respondent's biography on her official website, which stated that she was still employed by the prosecutor's office, contained incorrect information designed to privately benefit the respondent in some fashion. The information contained on the official website was not incorrect. She is still employed by the King County Prosecutor's Office when she wants to be. She has an ongoing leave of absence, which she can terminate by returning to work anytime she is not actively campaigning. Since respondent has an ongoing leave of absence with the King County Prosecutor's Office, she is still considered an employee of that office. The Legislative Ethics Board concludes, It is hereby ordered that there's no reasonable cause to believe respondent has violated RCW. So this just came out a few days ago. Given everything I just told you, right? The old emails, the very firm assertion from the prosecutor's office to Manka Dhingra, you don't work here. You're not on a leave of absence. Yeah, sure, you're welcome to come back to work and be rehired on a temporary basis if you want to do that. That's like me saying I work at Fox 13 News because someone told me, hey, you're welcome back anytime. Have you ever left a job for better opportunities and they say you're welcome back here anytime? That doesn't mean you still work there. And it doesn't mean you're on a leave of absence, particularly when the employer tells you directly you're not on a leave of absence, you don't work here. If you want to come back to us and say, hey, can I get rehired? Sure, we'll rehire you. So all of that evidence that Manka Dhingra very clearly lied and misrepresented her work history, and the Legislative Ethics Board finds that she still works there, she is still employed when she wants to be, that she has an ongoing leave of absence. So I get this sent to me and I'm thinking, what the hell is this? Like, there's ample evidence out there that she absolutely lied. And I reached out to the ethics board. What are you doing? How is that possible for you to determine that she is indeed on a leave of absence when the prosecutor's office says she's not on a leave of absence? Never got a response back from the Legislative Ethics Board. But in case I was missing something, I reached out to the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I sent them the finding from the Legislative Ethics Board, like, can you help me make sense of this? Because they're now saying she is on a leave of absence. She still works there. She can terminate at any time that she wants. Yet you've told me that's not the case. So Casey McNerthney, a spokesperson with the prosecutor's office, is equally confused by this finding. He said, it looks like the Legislative Ethics Board document you sent over confuses a leave of absence agreement with what Lisa actually wrote about an agreement that she could return to work in the office. Senator Dhingra was not on a leave of absence. There was not a leave of absence agreement. She had a last day. To be on a leave, there is separate formal paperwork. These details are in the emails from our PDR team, the emails I just read to you. Separately, he says, though, on September 3rd, Lisa Mannion wrote to the Legislative Ethics Board. So they'd reached out. There was one email exchange that we've been provided between the Legislative Ethics Board and Lisa Mannion, the elected prosecutor, where they say, hey, is it true that Manka Dhingra can come back to work when she wants? And Lisa responded to that question specifically. To answer your question, yes. The agreement Senator Dhingra describes below is still intact. As long as Manka is not actively campaigning, she's welcome to come back to the office and will be assigned as needed. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. So Casey McNerthney tells us the agreement is that she's welcome to come back. Again, come back to work. Reapply essentially for a job. So the Legislative Ethics Board asks the prosecutor's office one question, never asks, hey, is she on a leave of absence? To which the answer would have been, no. She's not on a leave of absence. She doesn't work here anymore. But yeah, she's a qualified prosecutor, so if she wants to come back to work, we'd happily have her. So you have the Legislative Ethics Board, which apparently does so little work. It didn't look into any of these previous emails, clearly saying she's not on leave of absence, she doesn't work here. Asked the prosecutor's office one vague question. Hey, if she wanted to come back to work, could she? Yeah. And they come to the conclusion, again, that she is still employed by the King County Prosecutor's Office when she wants to be, and that she has an ongoing leave of absence when they've been told she doesn't. Yeah. Again, I give the example. Like, heck, if Cairo Radio said to Nicole when she left, which I don't know if they did, you're welcome back anytime. You know, if that other thing doesn't work, come on back and we'll find a place for you. That's what happened here. She clearly violated state law. She clearly did something unethical and continued to do something unethical long after it had been uncovered. And the Legislative Ethics Board says, no, we've decided she still works as a prosecutor. We've decided she's on a leave of absence. Doesn't matter what the prosecutor's office says. Doesn't matter that the HR department says she's not. We've determined that what she did is ethical. How insane is that? So now, anytime there's a complaint to the Legislative Ethics Board, I'm going to be left wondering, how much work did they actually do to look into this? How much do they actually care to determine whether a lawmaker violated ethics laws? Apparently not very much. It would have taken like a little bit of Googling to find the emails where they tell her she doesn't work there, to find our segment about it, or any of the reporting from Como or Seattle Times. But they sent one vaguely worded email. Like, could she come back if she wanted to? Well, yeah. Doesn't mean she works here, though. So we'll continue to try to... I reached back out to the Legislative Ethics Board again today, and look, I'm not, like, Yeah, am I? Yeah, I am advocating for her to get in trouble for this. Because she just flat out lied to voters to try to get elected as Attorney General. Thankfully, she got caught. But there are other aspects, I'll tell you, of her work history and her professional experience that we continue to actively look into because we've been told by people that she's inflating other things. So this is a pattern, and she's still a Washington State Senator. Running for Attorney General did not negate that. She's the chair of the Public Safety Committee. She's responsible for spiking bills like fixes to the police pursuit. She's a very consequential state senator. I don't want her to get away with this. And I don't want to get her to get away with the other inflationary, that's a good use, inflationary work history tactics she uses. So this is wild stuff. Again, we've reached out to the Legislative Ethics Board. How in the world could this be your determination? It makes no sense, and it's not true. So we will follow up as appropriate. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. All right. Well, we lost the Seattle Times, and now we've lost the Tri-City Herald. More and more, the Tri-City Herald is starting to act like a Seattle news publication, which is very worrisome. Because, you know, the progressives have their grasp on this side of the Cascades, and now they're just tentacles over to the other side of the Cascades, and pretty soon... it's going to be just like Seattle over there. So they issued an endorsement in the race for Attorney General. Fine. The headline, there's a clear leader in the race for Washington Attorney General, and they choose Nick Brown. They say with the current Attorney General angling for the governor's office, Washingtonians will choose someone new to lead the state's legal work in November. We recommend they select Nick Brown. That's fine. That's their right to do that. In fact, Nick Brown came in and did an interview with us yesterday. Be on the lookout for that to be posted to Patreon and Locals. Brown's Republican opponent, Pete Serrano, lacks that extensive experience. He is the mayor of Pasco and was an environmental attorney with the U.S. Department of Energy at Hanford. He's a graduate of Florida Coastal School of Law, which we assume was a fine law school, but it's not Harvard. How stuck up is that? Yeah, it's not Harvard, so they don't allow blatant anti-Semitism and other woke ideology. How condescending is that? I'm sure that's a fine law school, but it's not Harvard. Well, it might be nice to see a Tri-Citian rise to statewide office. Serrano isn't as prepared for that role as Brown. This is the one that really gets me. Serrano has also staked out positions that are aggressively pro-gun and anti-COVID restrictions, views that don't match those of most Washingtonians. I beg to disagree. Pro-gun, maybe. Anti-COVID restriction, by the end of that 3 years, everyone, besides 5%, I think, of the real hardcore, still wearing a mask to bed lunatics, were anti-COVID restriction. I mean, you can find many Democrats, including the legislature, who were totally over it and wanted to rein in Governor Inslee's emergency powers. But it's just that it's that Harvard thing that really gets me.
I know. And also the pro-gun, can we call it pro-Second Amendment?
Pro-Second, no,
because
it's pro-gun.
Not pro-gun.
Pro-gun. Pro-weapon of war. It just cracks me up because it's especially over there in the Tri-Cities, certainly not as progressive as Seattle. And I guarantee if you did some polling in the Tri-Cities about COVID restrictions, most people would be on Pete Serrano's side about that. And frankly, Second Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not making a very good case. And
they're not.
That's what kills me is the Seattle Times. Nobody's making good cases for these arguments. They're just saying they're picking at things and
they're just finding little things to pick at. He's a graduate of Florida Coastal School of Law, which we assume was a fine law school, but it's not Harvard.
Right.
Thank God it's not Harvard. We've seen, and look, Nick's, we had him in. He was perfectly lovely. We
Yes,
had
and he does have a lot of experience at
Right,
the things he has
100%.
experience in, and then Pete has experience in the things he has experience
Right.
in. But as Pete and Bob and Nick have all stated, the AG's office, how many lawyers does he say he has?
800.
800. So I'm sure everybody has different specialties. So it's
Right.
fine.
But also, the most
Everybody's
qualified person
qualified.
on paper is obviously not always the most qualified person for the job. On paper, Bob Ferguson, qualified to be governor. He would destroy the state of Washington. What did the Seattle Times call him? Petty, pushy, overly ambitious. Yet they still endorsed him. And I think you're right with that. Like, these endorsements have been ridiculous.
Yep.
So few of them have made a coherent, in the Times, Tri-City Herald, whatever it is, a coherent case for the person they're endorsing. Which makes me think, if you can't make a coherent case, stay out of it.
Just say, we want Democrats.
Yeah, just
That's
say,
why we picked the Democrat.
We're choosing the Democrat.
Right.
100%. Because it's like in the
all it is.
OSPI race between David Olson and Chris Rakedall.
Mm-hmm.
The Seattle Times is like, oh, Chris Rakedall has destroyed public education and all of that. But David Olson said that he wants less DEI, so we have to endorse the right. No, just say you have to endorse the Democrat. Because you just have to, and you're going to, and you're not going to endorse Republicans.
Yep.
Like, I would be you're right. I would be less mad about that. Like, sorry, Republicans are just not in line with our values, so no matter who it is, we're going to endorse the Democrat. Don't say, oh, he went to Florida Coastal Law School, and that's not Harvard.
Which
so,
is a fine
as if it matters,
school.
which is a fine school. I think we should reach out for comment to Florida Coastal Law School of Law. Because honestly, like, Harvard has gone down 20 points this year.
Oh, yeah.
If you want some like woke, out of control ideologue, then look for someone from Harvard Law School. It's just wild. Throw it more birdcage liner. You got the stranger now. I don't even think the stranger deserves to be birdcage liner. Like, because I love birds. Birds are adorable. I don't even want their feces on the stranger. Is that too much? We'll find another use for the stranger. Maybe around Halloween where you put the little bags on people's doorsteps with dog poo and you light it up. Maybe like one of those.
I mean, we don't encourage that behavior.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's illegal. Anyway, okay. Moving on, we're going to talk about, did Mayor Bruce Harrell endorse a socialist? This is like a mystery. It's been a mystery for the last 24 hours. I'll clue you in on it. First, if you're thinking about selling your home this year, by all means, check out a few real estate agents, but you want to make sure you do a few things. Ask them, what can you do for me that other real estate agents can't do for me? And then ask them to provide you with a couple happy customers. Or a couple people who can tell them about their experience. We talked to retired Seattle police officer Mike Boggs about his experience using Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com to sell his home. He said he utilized Wes's concierge service, which is very unique to Wes Jones and Associates, could not believe how fast his home sold.
Wes came out and met with us, and we told him what our concerns were, and he mentioned the concierge service, and we did take advantage of it. And it was, I think, the smartest thing we've ever done as far as selling a house. We sold in 6 days for a full asking price.
Oh, amazing.
It was really amazing, especially in, this isn't the greatest climate for house sales right now. And that's one of the concerns we had was we're, building a house. And so you have to kind of time this correctly so that you have the proceeds from the house that you're selling to put towards the house that you're going to be buying or building. And we actually put on the market a little sooner than we thought we needed to, and it sold so fast that it was this is fantastic.
Yeah, and Wes knows what he's doing, and he's been through the ups and downs of the markets, and he knows how to time the market. He knows how to get your home ready so that it stands out amongst other listings. So check him out, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, and he's just awesome. A better way to sell your home. Maybe I should change his slogan. Instead of a better way to sell your home, Wes Jones. He's just awesome.
And he dresses nice.
He does dress nice. He always comes in like a leather coat.
Stylish.
I'm like, wow, you're so stylish. I wish I was that cool. All right. Allegedly, okay, just for the lawyers, allegedly, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is supporting a socialist to represent Seattle in the state legislature. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Boop. Okay, so again, allegedly. So Sean Scott, as you know, is running against Andrea Suarez in the 43rd legislative district, which represents basically downtown Seattle. Andrea Suarez with We Heart Seattle, totally sane, totally rational, totally should win. Please, God, please. And then Sean Scott, who's run before for Seattle City Council. He, he's an active socialist. He's a democratic socialist, but he's just a socialist. Supported police defunding. I remember this was back when he was running for Seattle Council. He lost, thankfully. I was moderating a candidate forum put on by the Seattle Police Officers Guild. And I asked him whether he thinks all police officers engage in bias policing. And he said yes, which is just crazy. So he's very fringe. He came out with a statement supporting all the, pro-Palestine, let's block freeways and airports and all that stuff. And he said it's a Seattle tradition and they should continue to be able to do it. So this is as fringe as you get. Even in Washington State, he is far, far outside the mainstream, which is why Jonathan Cho, who first posted this, was stunned, and I in turn am stunned after hearing it, when Sean Scott on the campaign trail said this.
Also been endorsed by Representative Nicole Macri, who would be my seatmate in Olympia. We're happy to have the support of the actual 43rd Legislative District Democrats. Proud to be supported in this race as well by Planned Parenthood, by the Washington State Council of Firefighters, and actually by the Mayor of Seattle as well.
What? He says he's supported by the Mayor of Seattle. So that doesn't ring true to Andrea Suarez. I know Jonathan Cho said, and I saw that, and I'm reaching out to him last night, and he said he's been trying to get in touch with the mayor's office. They haven't responded. I texted the mayor's communications person last night. Hasn't responded. Nicole emailed the mayor's communications staff last night or this morning. This morning. Hasn't responded. If Mayor Bruce Harrell, who has said that he is pro-public safety, trying to get law enforcement ranks rebuilt, trying to clean up downtown, is genuinely supporting the socialist candidate over Andrea Suarez to represent downtown Seattle and Olympia, that is a major, major political story. I mean, this is a guy during the BLM riots. This is a quote from Sean Scott at the time. He told the Seattle Times, "The rate of legislative change was moving much quicker when there were cops on fire in this city." So you have two potential stories here, and I wanted to tell you about this today, even though we don't have a definitive answer, because I don't know when the mayor's office will respond, if they will respond. Either two things are true. Either Sean Scott's lying, right? Or Mayor Bruce Harrell is supporting a socialist to represent downtown Seattle, which would negate any work he's ever done on the public safety front in Seattle, period. Now, the language, can you play that clip from Sean Scott one more time, please?
Also been endorsed by Representative Nicole Macri, who would be my seatmate in Olympia. We're happy to have the support of the actual 43rd Legislative District Democrats. Proud to be supported in this race as well by Planned Parenthood, by the Washington State Council of Firefighters, and actually by the Mayor of Seattle as well. Yeah, so the language is interesting because he says at the beginning, I'm endorsed by so-and-so, also supported by. So is he taking something Mayor Bruce Harrell said and saying, well, he supports me but hasn't endorsed? Because on his website, Mayor Bruce Harrell is not listed as an endorsement. But even if Mayor Harrell has offered some words of support to a socialist candidate who's a police abolitionist, who supports rioting and lighting cop cars on fire, blocking access to the airport, blocking I-5 as a means of driving political change, that's probably the biggest scandal of Mayor Bruce Harrell's time in office. That's insane. That is, especially when his opponent is Andrea Suarez, who's been working night and day to clean up homeless encampments, do what the city hasn't done, connect people to services, and tell the truth about the drug and fentanyl crisis and the public safety crisis. So we're going to find this, we're going to figure it out one way or the other. Either Sean Scott's lying, which wouldn't surprise me. I would love to check his X account, but I'm blocked. Everyone I know virtually is blocked. Nicole, will you check are you blocked? Can you check
I'm
if you're
usually
blocked?
not blocked because I'm pretty quiet on social for reason.
His X account is at Eyes on the Storm. See if he's addressed this on his X account. At Eyes on the Storm. Okay, I'll let that mull. So we need to know from the mayor's office. Again, I texted his communication staff last night, like, hey, before I share this, can you tell me, is this true? Because it doesn't ring true to me. So either, I hope it's not true.
I hope it's just that Sean Scott is lying. It seems like a very weird thing to lie about publicly, but either he's lying, which is a huge issue and a huge red flag, and we shouldn't send liars to Olympia, or Mayor Bruce Harrell doesn't mean anything he's ever said about public safety, and we can't take him seriously anymore, and he cannot continue to be the mayor if he's endorsing a socialist to represent downtown Seattle. Anything on Eyes on the Storm that he's addressed this claim? No?
Not this claim.
Well, now he's going to block it. You know that, right?
Well, if you can figure out who I am.
I think that won't be too hard, but we'll create a little burner account. So anyway, that's wild. That's like one of the craziest things I've ever heard. That's just nuts. All right, let's talk a little bit about the VP debate, shall we? Nicole and I kind of have some disagreements on the VP debate, which we'll discuss later. So I'm going to get to some of the major moments, but first I want to talk about housing specifically, because I was kind of, I think pleasantly, first of all, let me just say, with the VP debate, I thought it was a pleasant debate.
Oh, yes.
I thought it was a pleasant debate. Can you actually play, Nicole, there was this cut put together by Recount? Because they're both from the Midwest, right? And I'm from Minnesota, so Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. People in Minnesota are just nice. And J.D. Vance is from Ohio, and so the Recount put this together saying that the debate was just full of just Midwest niceness.
We could come together.
Now, Tim admirably admits, I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland.
I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart.
Kamala Harris proposed this to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay.
So.
I actually agree with Tim Walz.
I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this.
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it?
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening.
And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it.
Thank you, Senator Vance.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
Isn't that nice?
You know what? If we vote Trump, that's what 2028 could look like.
But that was so pleasant. I mean, honestly, now I think J.D. Vance absolutely dominated the debate. He was just, his demeanor, and he was really smart. He was able to criticize, the Harris-Walz ticket without being an ass, frankly, without getting off topic, with being very deferential, which is very hard to do, and coming away looking like the nice guy just by getting his shots in. And he focused smartly a lot on Kamala Harris. I think that's wise. Look, vice presidents don't do an awful lot, right? And Kamala Harris hasn't done an awful lot as vice president, but she is clearly, I think, in terms of Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, the easier target, right? Because you can look at the border, you can talk about, she's been in the current administration, about her economic policies. So it gave J.D. Vance this ability to sort of be kind and deferent, almost. And there was moments where he's like, I almost feel bad kind of for Tim Walz that he has to defend her record. Like, that's a very hard thing to do. So it just was, I think, an exceptional performance for J.D. Vance. Tim Walz was super nervous at the beginning. Fine. People get nervous. I mean, we talked about Dave Reichert's first debate. He was nervous as heck. And then Tim Walz definitely settled in a little bit. But I mean, that was one of the best debate performances I've ever witnessed in terms of J.D. Vance. Like, I think he could have even been a little less nice in terms, been a little more forceful when it mattered. But for instance, he had a lot of self-deprecation when he talked about abortion. I think the way he talked about abortion was very, very smart in terms of saying, hey, Republicans need to do better on this issue. Clearly, there are a lot of Americans who are concerned about how we handle the issue of abortion. We need to communicate it more clearly. We need to understand their concerns more clearly and take them to heart. I thought his answer on that was fantastic as someone who is inclined to vote Republican, but is also pro-choice. So anyway, I thought he did a great job. But I want to focus on just a couple things. First, I want to discuss the housing issue, because housing was a big part of the debate. It's not the sexiest topic. So you don't often hear housing issues brought up because moderators want to focus on sort of these big ticket issues that are going to maybe cause like some moments in the debate and cause some back and forth. So this is one of the areas where Nicole and I kind of both agree on this. I think one of the areas where Tim Walz outperformed JD Vance a little bit. Not necessarily on the strength of his ideas, but I think JD Vance got caught up on the wrong thing. So I'm going to go through a few clips for you. So Kamala Harris came out with this housing plan. Basically, we're going to give people money for down payments, which is a terrible, terrible idea, which is going to drive up the cost of homes for everyone. But JD Vance really didn't, he got so distracted with other things. He didn't focus on that. Here's Tim Walz talking about that idea.
This program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment.
Yeah, so JD Vance had an opportunity to be like, well, those aren't the same thing. The Veterans Home Loan Program and what Kamala Harris is proposing, those aren't the same thing, and they're not even close to being on the same scale in order to literally tilt home prices across the country. And instead of focusing, laser focused on what that would do to housing prices and explaining from, on the supply and demand side, from an economic perspective, this is going to be disastrous for the middle class. He focused on these other kind of fringe things that I don't even think are really good ideas, like using more federal lands as space to build homes.
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Okay, so that was really two things to talk about: the federal lands issue and then the illegal immigration issue, which we'll get to more in a moment. But Walz smartly turned around and basically asked JD Vance, what Fed land are you going to build on?
There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that.
Yeah, it's just a weird point to belabor. And also he makes a good point, which is people need, we don't have a lack of land per se if where you live doesn't matter. If where you live doesn't matter and proximity to work and school and all that stuff, there's a ton of land out there. That's not the issue. People want to be able to afford a place to live closer to where they work and their kids go to school. And that becomes the issue, is how do we do that in a city like Seattle, for instance? So Vance talks about this issue of illegal immigration and how it's impacting the housing market.
Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership.
And then the moderator turned around and asked him specifically what proof he has, essentially, that this is happening.
What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do.
Yeah, so the regulation thing is an important part of this. There's a million things that have led to increased home prices, lack of available housing. I didn't like that the moderator so quickly dismissed an obvious issue. What proof do you need? Of course, if you have 25 million, 10 million, 5 million new people in the country, they have to live somewhere. They have to live somewhere. So this idea that they're just not occupying apartments or they're not occupying homes is ridiculous. Or otherwise, are you saying like 25 million of them are homeless? Like some of them are, I'm sure, but that's not the case. And I did look up, he did post this Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, where they said, given the current low inventory of affordable housing, the inflow of new migrants to some geographic areas could result in upward pressure on rents as additional housing supply may take time to materialize. And that's just common sense. If you've got a bunch of new people flooding into an area, the demand on rental units in particular is increasing, then yeah, increased demand is going to mean increased prices. So I think that's a good point. You know, his focus on regulations is good, but is it so much of a federal issue? That's what Tim Walz pointed out.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Yeah, but like, as if we're talking about fire regulations, Tim Walz, as if we're talking about, oh yeah, we should deregulate home building and, you know, rental units and say that you don't have to have fire alarm. That's not what we're talking about. You know, in Washington State, he makes a good point though. A lot of these are local. A lot of them are at the state level, at the county level, at the municipal level, and they just pile on top of each other. You know, in our state, one of the issues that we've really had a problem with are the permitting delays. Like, you know, every month you have a permitting delay, you're adding tens of thousands of dollars onto the cost of building the home, and who is that passed on to? The person who's ultimately going to buy the home. And so this is an issue, but you know, the president and the vice president should absolutely be messaging on that, whether they have a direct impact on it or not. If you've got a Democratic president and vice president and they're telling Democratic states, look, you have to cut permitting issues. You have to cut regulation. People can't afford a home. You don't think Jay Inslee would bite and say, yeah, we're going to do that because they're telling us to do it. So that's absolutely an issue. But one of the biggest ones, this is the only one I think J.D. Vance really excelled on because it's impacting us here in Washington State. And that is the burden of energy and environmental regulations.
Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not by the way just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
100%. So that would have been a good one for him to focus more on. I think the illegal immigration thing is a factor. It's one of many factors. But, you know, the whole Fed lands thing, he should have gone after them for the free money that quote unquote, that the government wants to throw at people to help with their down payments. So that was like the one area where I really felt like J.D. Vance didn't excel. But overall, you know, he had a lot of good stuff throughout the debate. But on housing, they could hone that issue quite a bit more because it does impact every single American. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends at the Rental Housing Association of Washington. If you're a landlord in the state of Washington, small to mid-sized landlord, make sure that you become a member of RHA. It's like $600 a year, but they help you navigate this insane environment we're in. Speaking of regulations, energy burdens, all of these things, the crazy backlog that's happening with evictions, they can have your back. So rhawa.org, rhawa.org. Okay, let's do a couple other quick debate things. Can we do that? Sure. Okay, Nicole says sure. Or am I supposed to do a spot here? Okay, sorry. Nicole's like, you're skipping something. We've been talking a lot about the presidential race and certainly what's happening nationally and globally. I mean, Iran and Israel, that is just horrifying. We didn't even put that in the show today. So what's happening globally and nationally absolutely can have an impact on your retirement portfolio, and you want to make sure that it's properly protected. That's what Bulwark Capital and their team does. And that's what they specialize in, is managing your risk. You only get one retirement. Is it properly protected? You want to make sure your financial advisor is adjusting as needed. And that's what Zach Abraham and his team do. So they're going to adjust to market risks every day, help shield your portfolio as much as possible. It is their number one focus. You can get their free common sense investing guide at knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com. Okay. One other aspect of the debate I want to get to. So The last debate, the ABC News moderators were really panned for trying and failing to do real-time fact-checking. So they were like fact-checking and had, this whole like, oh, if he says this, say this. If he says this, say this. If he says this, say this. They had anticipated some of the mistruths that Donald Trump might say, but they clearly hadn't anticipated the mistruths that Kamala Harris would say. So it was a total one-sided fact-checking thing. And what I said after that debate was, if you're going to do that, first of all, that's incredibly difficult to fairly engage in real-time fact-checking. That's why a lot of networks leave it to after the fact. So I think since that ABC News was panned so heavily for its failed attempts at that, CBS News, which moderated last night's debate, they came out at the beginning, explained the rules, and basically said, like, we're not going to fact-check, but the candidates can fact-check each other.
Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
Yeah, so fact-check claims made by each other, and they did allow for a lot of that, right? But there was one moment in particular where the moderators, for whatever reason, decided that they were going to break the own rules that they'd set and jumped in to fact-check J.D. Vance. And when he called out their fact-check for not being accurate, they were trying to cut off his mic. And so it was just, I think, one of the moments of the debate that really sticks out to me.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990.
Muted them.
Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't have tried to fact check him then. Again, you either do it or you don't. You don't jump in, and she was clearly reading off, like knowing he was going to bring up this particular thing, engaged in a fact check, which he rightfully added the context that was necessary about what was going on with these Haitian migrants, and the fact that they were so easily able to come into the country. And so she kind of looked, and he had like all the facts ready to go, and then eventually they just cut the mic. So it was just this, you either do it or you don't do it, right? And my advice is, not that I'm like a network level moderator, but my advice is you don't do it unless it's egregious. You don't do it unless it is absolutely blatant and egregious. Because I also don't know that I necessarily like them having this rule ahead of time. We're not going to fact check at all. It's like, well, then why are you there? So I don't know that real-time fact checking, if that's your plan, is the best idea because you can't do it fairly. But if there is something that is absolutely outright egregious and you as a journalist know it's not true and you just don't say anything and you let it go out to millions of people, are you really doing your job as well? Like, for instance, the last debate I moderated was the gubernatorial debate between Lauren Culp and Jay Inslee. And Jay Inslee said that he knew about CHOP. And I was like, sitting there like, I can't possibly let this go. And we hadn't really built in fact checking, but I literally read his quote to him like, you said, that's the first I've heard of that. I haven't heard about that from any reliable source. And now you're saying you know about it? So there are moments. So I don't like this either all or nothing. Fact check what really needs to be fact checked in the moment and make sure that you're fact checking correctly. Otherwise, you're going to look foolish, as they did. All right. Before we get to our daily subscriber show poll, I saw this story out, and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. So the Seattle Police Department, this from Como News, is discontinuing its mounted patrol unit, citing a lack of resources. And the mounted patrol unit is, of course, their horsey unit, which, you know, I loved seeing the horsies downtown at riots and stuff.
I did, except for I always felt really bad for the horse.
Yeah.
Because it's so gross and dirty down there sometimes, and they're dealing with morons in front of them.
A needle. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm sad. But then at the same time, I feel good about the horses having better pastures to roam
You don't
in.
know. Nicole, did you not hear they're just putting the horses down?
No, they're not. I did hear.
Just kidding. I don't know why I'm laughing about that because I'm a psycho. No, they're not. But like, it's also, so it's 150 years they have had this mounted patrol. So there's like a little bit of history there. And, but also it's a good recruiting tool. You know, they use them for recruiting, or it's a good, not so much recruiting, rather community engagement tool, where they're out and the kids see them, and like all this Seattle Police Department politicians have been about, building bridges with communities and all this stuff. And it's like, is there a better unit of the Seattle Police Department than the cute little horsies with their cute little uniforms on and being like, hey, you want to pet the horse? So that's the only thing where I'm like, it's nostalgia, but it's also like the kids love that stuff.
I know.
You know?
It's kind of a sad sign of our times because it's gotten so ugly out there. I know it's a staffing issue too, but it's also just so ugly out there that we can't just focus on the cuteness of the horses.
100%. And that's the argument. That's the argument they're making is, look, we don't have any officers. We're 600 officers down. We can't afford to have officers dedicated to the mounted patrol unit. So I get that. So I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll on Patreon, Locals, and X. After 150 years, SPD is disbanding its mounted patrol unit over staffing issues across the agency. Do you believe this is the right decision? Yes, it's not vital, or no, it's part of history. Really split. Like 50-50.
I'm not surprised. It's hard to let go. It's hard to let go of old times. And I do think that I do appreciate the nostalgia, and I like to have things that are old around us. But
hard to say goodbye.
But I also feel for the horses, and you're not surrounded by the same citizens out there.
Yeah. Julie said it's not vital, but they should still have a small part of it for special occasions. Carol said, I'm sad to see the horses go. I believe they are important for crowd control and perception, but I also know the program and welfare costs are enormous. A sad reality that the limited funds could be better spent elsewhere within the department. Yeah, I think, it says discontinue. Now, I don't know that means they'll never bring it back, but it's going to be decades before SPD is restaffed, if it ever is. I don't know how you
the only
achieve that.
Patrol with the mounted patrol. Are there other ones in the state?
Are there other mounted patrol units in the state? I do not know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
In any agency?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know.
So it might not be the end totally. I wish we could just move them over to, eat them claw.
Yeah. Deb says, and I'm curious, Deb, for you to elaborate on this, because I'm not sure I agree. You say the horses and mounted officers are the best and most effective crowd control. Man, I've never seen them used in an active crowd control setting.
Oh, I think that was mentioned in one of the stories, actually. So I did see that mentioned, that they use them in some crowd control. I don't think it's an incident that SWAT needs to be brought in, but I think in just some of the other, they can kind of line up the horses, and so just a little more space.
I could see it being effective in terms of, is a left-wing rider really going to hurt a horse?
Well,
like they'll hurt the officer, but I think they're the PETA type, so they might be less inclined to hurt a horse.
I think the crowds they're talking about are more like sports crowds, fans crowds, things like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I've covered many a riot and protest in my career, and the horses are always at Westlake Park, but I've never seen them engaged in active crowd control. Y said, I voted yes because I don't know how useful they are in the city of Seattle. It is sad to see they have to shut down such a historical part, but also staffing is an issue, and you need to put officers so they can police the city effectively. Yeah, if the choice is, I guess, okay. If the choice is officer on a horse so the kids can pet it, or an officer responding to a 911 call of a crime in progress, I get it. Vivian says, like our K9 unit, have it supported by citizen donations and fundraising. Horse Patrol is a great way to connect with citizens, but the only issue there is that you'd have to have extra officers. And so they're not lacking for money to hire extra officers. They're lacking for people who want to be officers. So whether the money is private or public, you can't convince people to work for the city of Seattle who don't want to work for the city of Seattle.
I did look up whether there are other mounted patrols in Washington, and it looks like there might be some specialty things like the Clark County Fair Mounted Patrol. So they, during fair times, have a mounted patrol. And then Spokane Cops Mounted Patrol, which is a community outreach program. So maybe, and then of course the Army National Guard. But I think that, so they're just more like specialty.
Yeah. On locals, Potter says officers have easier mobility off a horse and can respond quicker. I'm also concerned about the health and safety of the horse while on patrol. If it's not safe for people, it's not safe for animals. Yeah, and like the crazy people downtown, and I will admit, I don't know the extent to which mounted patrol is used because I've only ever seen them in community engagement settings and in like the park during protests, but never responding on the front lines. So I don't know that they're ever used for like responding to something happening, a real-time crime in progress. I don't think so. And God forbid, I mean, we already know what happened with the Border Patrol horses and, the Border Patrol on the horses just whipping migrants. It wasn't true, obviously, but pictures sure made it look like it was true. So,
did.
yeah. Well, hopefully they're not saying never again and they're just going to... I know a big advocate of the Mounted Patrol was former Chief Adrian Diaz. He loved the Mounted Patrol. He loved horses and all of that. So maybe it was just clinging to life while he was the chief and he's not the chief anymore. So they're like, okay, goodbye. Yeah. All right. But you know where it would be nice to ride horses? On one of the many trails around Natchez RV Resort. Oh, I'm good at this. Well thank you. Natchez is going to get in touch with us like, hey, can you just read the ad and not like pat yourself on the back? Happening this weekend, there are still some openings for private showings at Natchez RV Resort. They're in phase 2 right now. So there's a couple things you can go out and check out. They've got 12 extra large RV lots starting at just $89.9. But if you don't have an RV, they also have these stunning turnkey park models available. Perfect way to make Natchez RV Resort your home away from home, even if you don't have an RV. They just opened their brand new clubhouse. It is massive. It's 4,300 square feet, so a lot of room for visiting and entertaining with guests. Gourmet kitchen. They've got their pool and hot tub that they're finalizing. I should check in with them, but I think they were pretty close to getting it done. They've got, so much recreation to do. Tennis, pickleball, dog park, child park. I always say the dog park, but never the kids park. I feel bad. It's because I'm a dog mom, not a kid mom. And then there's a million recreational things to do around there. 300 days of sunshine. So Natchez RV Resort, schedule your private showing for this weekend, October 5th and 6th. NatchezRVResort.com, NatchezRVResort.com. And if you've got a horse, bring it on out, maybe the Mounted Patrol unit.
Pick up after your horse.
Well, yeah, you always have to pick up after your horse. What's wrong with you?
I don't think people do very often.
Yeah, there's some trails out by our house that people can, has the signs like horse crossing type thing. And there's always some big old horse doo-doos there. I'm like, come on, people. I get it. Back to nature. I don't even need people to pick up their dog or horse doo-doo. Just throw it into the woods and let it settle back down into the earth and help things grow, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm fine with that.
All right. Should we get to questions, comments before I just talk about... There's been a lot of feces-related content on the show today. I talked about the birds. I talked about the dogs and the horses. What is going on?
What's on your mind?
I guess. Matt Gilbert with a $10 super chat in honor of Dory on his heavenly birthday. Thanks, Matt. We miss Dory. Every event I'm at, people still ask me about Dory. They still talk about how much they miss Dory. I was at an event with Kelly Chambers this week and multiple people, and they were like, how's Nicole doing? And yeah, so I love when people bring him up and talk about him and stuff. And
I did talk to his wife and his daughter this week, and they're all doing great. Just so everybody knows, they're rolling on.
Yeah,
it's different, but they're doing okay. There's a new baby in the family. There's a wedding coming up, so all good things.
Yeah,
just different.
Well, happy heavenly birthday, Dory. Tri-City Herald story on them being like the Seattle Times. Greg Anderson, could it be that media, both organizations and individuals, are afraid of losing access to government and politicians? I think that factors in, especially when you have someone as petty as Bob Ferguson, for instance. But I think Democrats have a reputation as like the ones that are in power right now is like shutting down access to information. So that's always a concern. You see it with journalists when they engage in an interview. They might not be as hostile as maybe they should be, as the story warrants, because they're like, well, we need them to talk to us again. But they might also see, like, I think for some of these endorsements, they believe that the person they've endorsed is going to hands down win. There's no chance. And so they're like, well, we want to be on the right side of this. Janice Folsom Miller, as a citizen of the Tri-Cities, this is exactly why the Herald is losing subscribers and money. They are sounding like woke Seattle. Well, cancel your Tri-Cities Herald subscription and subscribe to Undivided for just $5 a month. Edward Owen, what is the reason Dave Reichert has not had many campaign commercials? Ferguson had them all morning, and even in the evenings, he has no money. They're outspending playing him like 50-1. Also, there's an issue where, so some of the ones you're seeing right now on abortion are funded by the Democratic Governors Association. And the Republican Governors Association has not spent money in this state, historically very blue state, because they're focused on other races. So like this really terrible abortion one that's up right now is funded by the DGA. And so, Bob has all this money he carried over from previous campaigns that Dave just did not come into the race with. And so I will say, I have a little frustration about comments like this, only because my immediate response is, have you donated money?
That's why I put it in here.
Yeah. And like every time I announce an event we're doing with Dave, they're like, well, why aren't you doing one here? Why aren't you doing one here? Why aren't you doing, we're doing that. We're doing something. And like, I'm not saying everybody has to do as much as we've done for Dave, but like, we're focused on areas where it can make the biggest difference. It's like, I swear to God, we've done 50 events for Dave. And invariably people are like, well, why are you doing it there and not here? And I'm like, you guys, I'm doing it. I'm doing there for a reason. Like, we're putting in so much effort. We're working, Nicole and I, like 7 days a week when we're not doing the show. We're trying to help with the initiatives, or we're trying to help Dave. We're freaking exhausted. And then people are like, why he hasn't come here? And I'm like, well, he has. He just came there 2 months ago. And it's like, I don't see commercials. Well, have you donated any money? So I know that times are tough, but it's like, you could even donate $5. Like, if a bunch of people donated $5, they need about 30 grand to run a single airing of an ad. That's a lot of money, but that's easy for people if they donate in small amounts to be able to get them, help them get some ads out there. So he has aired some ads, by the way. It just hasn't been with the frequency that Bob Ferguson has. Money is a factor.
Hasn't been on the Seahawks games. Got to get one on a Seahawks game, but man, that's expensive.
It's expensive. So anyway, he has, he just doesn't have as much money. That's the bottom line. So people need to volunteer. They need to donate. And maybe you have, Edward. So this isn't necessarily a rant about you specifically. You might have already donated to his campaign, but you need money to do this, unfortunately. And Bob is spending his money on a bunch of lies. He is the biggest liar of any political candidate I've ever witnessed in 15 years. It's horrendous. Jeff Monahan, the VP debate was the polar opposite of the presidential debate. Nice change of pace. I agree. It was like, wow, look
afterwards,
at these adults.
When they both introduced their wives and stood there for a bit. I like that they kept that on screen. Look at everybody, they get along.
It's nice.
Like I said, this is what 2028 could look like.
Yeah,
please.
I mean, as long as they're good candidates. I mean, I don't think
That's
Tim Walz is like a good
start over.
candidate, but like,
Start over.
Shauna Shasher, the price of hay has seriously increased too. I'd imagine the cost of keeping and maintaining a horse is part of it. Yeah. If it's like they're spending money and they're like, well, we're down officers. It's expensive to keep the mounted patrol unit, so we just need to get rid of it. Deanna Sanderson, I'm an equestrian in Clark County. The mounted patrol here is made up of volunteers. Perhaps a volunteer program can be established strictly for public relations purposes. I like that idea. Diana Manning, does anyone know where in Marysville and what time on 10/11 we need to do sign waving for Dave? So, Nicole, can you do me a huge favor while I waste time? Can you pull that graphic from my Facebook page on the Marysville sign waving and let me know when it's ready? So here's the deal, people. As I just go on this rant about, what are you doing? And I don't mean it like you guys in particular. I know you're sharing things. And I asked you in our daily subscriber show poll yesterday, like, there's a lot of ways that we can do something. And I understand that some of these races are an uphill battle. But I don't know about you. I don't want to wake up on November 6th and be like, should I have done more? Should I have taken fewer days off? Should I have been out doing more events, posting more things? So I just want to leave it all on the floor. I just want to leave it all out there and wake up November 6th, regardless of the outcome, knowing that personally I did everything I could to try to save the state. And I'm asking you to do the same. Whether it is putting a sign up in your yard, making a small donation to a campaign, doesn't have to be Dave Reichert's campaign, to any campaign where you really are concerned about the outcome, getting out there, sign waving, texting, calling a few of your friends, making sure that they're not falling for the lies, that they understand the issues, that they understand they need to vote yes to pay less. So here's what we're doing. We're leaving it all out there. So we are going to be hosting 4 events that we are trying to gather a volunteer army. We need you to be part of our volunteer army. We have looked at data from the campaign. We have identified 4 purple districts where there are undecided voters, where there are independent voters who we can reach and convince in the race for governor to do something different. We really believe if we can get enough of you out there, if we can flood these areas and these purple districts with volunteers, that we can give Dave a fighting chance to get him across the finish line. So our first mass volunteer outing is going to be on the 11th. October 11th in Marysville from 3 to 6 p.m. It's a Friday, but there's already a rally happening at 6 p.m. hosted by former Snohomish County Sheriff Adam Fortney. So the plan is we're going to go out there, put in 3 hours of really hard work with an army of volunteers. Dave will be there as well. And then we're going to go have drinks with Adam Fortney, his wife Jill, and other candidates for public office. So this is a day of action with Dave to save Washington. The first one is happening in Marysville, 3 to 6 p.m. I have this flyer up on my social media pages. I will also put it over on Patreon and Locals. And I just need to, Nicole, if you could put it back up. I'm having trouble seeing the details from here. Give me a second. Sorry, this is very important, so I want to make sure I read the details. So we're going to be sign waving and door knocking. So if door knocking sounds horrible to you, or you're like, I don't want to do that, if you have the capability of holding a sign, we are going to flood some of the more densely trafficked areas with sign waivers. So you can do that as well. You can volunteer to help sign people up. There are a million things you can do, but we need, I genuinely mean it. We need all of you to come. We need you to bring your kids. They can hold a sign. It's a good task for them to do. We need you to call your friends and your family. We need hundreds of you out there to make this a success. So October 11th in Marysville, we're going to meet at Jennings Park, 3 p.m., hand out assignments. We're going to go out. We're going to get down to business for Dave, and then we're going to go have some adult beverages, but kids are all welcome. So again, kids make excellent sign holders. So join us in an army of volunteers. The first one is in October 11th in Marysville. Then the very next day, we're going to be in Bothell on October 12th. Details to come. On the 19th of October, we're going to be in Federal Way. And on October 26th, we're going to be in Steilacoom. So we need you to come. Hell, come to all of them. You don't have to live in the area either. If you are anywhere and you're able to travel and help us form an army of volunteers for any or all of these dates, hell, I don't know what special prize I'll give you, but if you can come out for every single one of them, we would sure appreciate it. We've got to do this, guys. We've got to leave everything on the table because Bob Ferguson would be the end of Washington State as we know it. We cannot afford to continue down this path. Too much is at stake for public safety, for our men and women in uniform, for taxes and spending, for working class families. So if you can be there, spread the word. Right now, this is up on Facebook. I'll get it up on X. It's up on Instagram, Patreon, Locals. Share. Encourage your friends and family to come as well. Is that enough guilting?
Yeah, I think that's
the intent
good.
is to guilt. The intent is to guilt. So again, bring your children. You got a family of 7 kids. Love it. I'll give every dang one of them a sign and they can wave it till their heart's content. And it's a good energy thing. You want your kid to kill some energy in the middle of the day? Get them out there sign waving. It'll be great. Okay. Did I miss any super chats, Nicole?
Yeah,
yes.
There's just
Baron
two.
of Gray Matter. Corrupt lefty ethics board with a few feckless Republicans. This is why Dave needs to be elected and we need a major change. And then on Sean Scott, because he mentioned firefighters back him too. Firefighter unions are often left. Bob Ferguson has been endorsed by some firefighter unions. It's crazy. He said, if firefighters back Scott, get ready for equity-induced response to emergencies. Black and BIPOC getting priority. If you're white and on fire, oh well. Yeah, by the addresses, they'll have White House, non-White House. And then you'll get the priority, let the white people burn. Let the white people burn. I'm just kidding. That's a little divisive, but I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Okay, good comments. That's been my rant for today about we've got to do everything we can. If you've never volunteered, it's okay. I've never knocked on doors either. I have never knocked on doors for a political candidate, but I'm going to do it. And Nicole, that sounds like something she would hate. No, you're knocking on doors too. Because you have to, if we're asking people to get out of their comfort zone,
sign waving is out of my comfort zone.
Which is so funny because you have a million friends. You have more friends than anyone I know. Nicole asked me to find people to get a ticket to a concert at a last minute. I'm I have no friends. I have 4 friends. Nicole has a million friends. She's always out doing things. She just beep, 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 beep when we're out in public. And then she's like, I don't want to sing happy birthday on the show. I don't want to knock on doors. I don't want to wave signs. You're acting shy, which is absurd.
It's something that I work on. I've come a long way.
I just don't see you as a shy person.
I'm not very shy, but self-conscious. There's some things there maybe. Okay. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, this will be a good exercise for you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nicole Thompson. I'm here to tell you not to vote for Bob Ferguson.
Deal.
Okay, gotcha. All right, with that, let's get to our closing sanity check, shall we? I don't even know how to intro this one. Let's just say that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has some interesting friends.
So I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it.
Great. That's your closing sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. Common sense would also dictate that maybe you don't make friends with school shooters, but I wonder what he was trying to say. Surely
Maybe
he wasn't trying to say
shooting
that.
victims, I'm thinking, or parents.
In no realm do I think he meant to say he's friends with school shooters.
I don't believe so either.
Probably the worst gaffe of any debate in modern history. Yeah, friends with school shooters. If you've not signed up to support our show already, we really would appreciate it. You know, I'll just say we've been spending a lot of time lifting other things up, the initiatives, candidates, because we know the importance of it. Maybe not as much time advertising our own business. So if you would like to become a subscriber, we really would appreciate the support to continue this mission. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. We'll see you back here on the live show tomorrow evening.